What's going on, y'all? Hopefully everybody's doing well. Hopefully everybody having a good day. It's Friday. It's Friday. I hope everybody's going to be safe over the weekend. Here in my area, in Pennsylvania, Philly area, we're expecting a large amount of snow. Whenever there's this type of weather, it always makes me think of Kensington and the people that are there on the streets. Makes me think of the people that are lucky enough to have tents or a sleeping bag or somewhere to be protected from the elements. Maybe they have an abandoned car to sleep in. Maybe they have an abandoned building that they could sleep in and be safe. So that's a catch-22, right? When they have an abandoned building to sleep in, it provides them with a little bit of privacy, a little protection from the elements. You know, they don't have to be out in the rain or the cold, but they're also isolated, right? Anything can happen in those abandoned buildings. They call them abandos. Anything can happen and anything does happen. I've seen, you name it, I've seen it in those buildings, unfortunately. There was a time during my addiction that, I was never technically homeless, right? I stood in the streets because I didn't want to come home. As crazy as that sounds, that is such a normal thing in addiction. A lot of times we do it to protect our family, right? We do it because if we're in a relationship, our significant other, we don't want to go home and we don't want to hear the fighting. We might have just spent the last money, bill money, diaper money, food money. We might have just spent on drugs. We don't want to go home and hear the fighting. We don't want to go home and have our significant other wait till we nod off or go to sleep and dig in our pockets and take our drugs. My daughter's mother, she was good for that. She would try to, take my material and she wouldn't throw it away. She would just hold it over my head. She sort of figured, I guess, that, all right, if I have this, I could sort of control him in a weird way. And that's the way she was. She was a piece of work, maybe with this format of video, I'll probably end up speaking about it a little bit. But she was definitely, and a lot of people say, oh, I got a crazy baby mom. I got this, I got that. This is like Lifetime TV material, like very, I don't know. Anyway, back to the topic, right? I took a detour right there real quick. Let me get back on the road. So anyway, some of us don't want to go home because we don't want to subject our children to that, right? We may be on a run for parole and we know, okay, the more time I spend at home, the more likely I am to get locked up. And then if I get locked up, I got to go through the sickness. I got to go through the withdrawal. So we spend that time in the streets. In the summertime, it's bad because of the heat. In the wintertime, it's bad because of the cold. So just last year in Kensington, there was a woman that was frozen to death in Needle Park. There was she was frozen to death. They found her in the morning, and she was essentially, frozen. Passed away. That's a bad way to go. I met a gentleman who this was about 2 years ago. He was in a wheelchair, right? He didn't have no legs. He didn't have no arms. But you could tell they weren't taken off by a doctor. They weren't like amputated. And you could tell he was born with them because it was at different lengths. So I was curious, and I asked him. He was an older black guy, probably in his 50s or 60s. And he looked healthy for the most part. He was husky guy. He wasn't fit, but he was husky. Had meat on his bones. So I asked him, I said, "Excuse me, brother." I said, "I don't mean to pry, and you could tell me to mind my business. But what happened? How do you find yourself in a wheelchair without any limbs?" And he began to tell me. He said, "Well, it was a couple years ago. It was a cold winter night. And he said, I had just got the worst news of my life." Right? And he proceeded to tell me that he had a son. And his son was in the streets, involved, selling drugs. And his son was also a guy that would go and do stick-ups. He was, he was a stick-up kid. So his son had ended up sticking up the wrong group of people, right? And it came and bit him in the ass. He told me that he was at a house with his girl and their children, and a home invasion occurred. It was a girl that initially knocked at the door, or a woman, and I guess it was to lower their guard if they looked out the door. And this, I believe, was before the time of like Ring doorbells and all that type of stuff. So the woman knocked at the door because they looked out the curtain, looked out the peephole, seen it was a lady. It was in the middle of the day when this happened, with his son. And they opened up the door. They ended up rushing into the house. It was 3 guys. They tied up the adults in the house. Ended up running through the house, looking for drugs, looking for money. And it was get back for something that he had done. So he knew the people that were in the house. There was a teenager that was also in the house. His son told the teenager, "You need to get out of the house." I don't know, exactly what happened, how it went down, how he was able to tell the teenager, and I'm sure that there was probably, in these type of situations, they'll usually put everybody in a room, handcuff or zip tie, the adults. A lot of times if there's young children, they unless there's some real animals, they really won't do nothing to the children. But they'll put everybody in a room, and they might tell somebody, "Yo, watch the room. Leave somebody at the door with a gun, whatever. Watch the door," right? So he ended up telling the teenager, "They don't have masks on. You need to get out of here." And he was basically saying, they're not planning to leave anybody in this house alive because they're showing their face. If they were hiding their face, then maybe they would be hoping to, then maybe I guess he would have felt a little bit more comfortable because they wouldn't have been able to identify them. He said they don't have masks on. They're not worried about being identified, He thought they were going to kill everybody in the house. So he tells the teenager, you need to get out of the house and get help. Said there was also, little children in the house. So, long story short, the son ends up being killed. The woman ends up being killed. The children are left alone. No harm came to them. The teenager was shot and survived. The guy that I was speaking to, he gets the call. And the call is, your son's dead. He goes out and gets high. I don't know what's up with these lights, but they're tripping. I hope y'all see it. And it's not just me tripping here by myself. I think there's different modes, and I think I got it set on like sound activate. I do. I got it set on sound activate. Yeah, okay. I was tripping. I was like, yo, why is these lights blinking? Yeah, I seen it. I'm not going crazy. So anyway, he gets the call. The son's dead. His girl's dead. The teenager was shot, is in the hospital fighting for his life. So he said the gentleman that I was speaking to, he had been clean for a while. He said instantly it caused him to relapse. He went out on that cold night, got a bag of dope. From the time that he had last used, it was when it was strictly heroin around. Now it was fentanyl and xylazine and benzos and everything else that's in the dope now. So he said he sniffed the bag. Instantly, he knew that he was in trouble. Next thing he knows, he wakes up. He's in the hospital. Kind of a situation that happened to me. He wakes up in the hospital. He looks down at his arm. It's black. Looks at his other arm. It's black. Looks at his legs. They're black. He got frostbite. Passed out in the snow. Caught frostbite. Had to get his legs and his arms amputated. And at the time I met him, he was clean now. He wasn't getting high. So the gentleman, he was clean now. He said he was just passing through Kensington. And for me, when people tell me they're clean, but I meet them down Kensington, I always have to take it with a grain of salt, right? Because you can't always look at somebody and tell that they have a habit or tell that they're high or relapsed. That's not the case. And everybody down there isn't getting high, but I just, so. And I asked them, I said, how does that feel knowing that you did something, right? And how does it feel knowing that you tried to numb your pain and ended up losing your arms and your legs? And he said it's a constant reminder every single day. He says he can't get dressed by himself. Can't put his clothes on, can't take his clothes off. He can't bathe himself. He said he has to rely on somebody. He said he has to rely on somebody else for everything. That's one of the things that comes to my mind every time there's a snowstorm now. Since he told me that story, that comes to my mind every time there's a snowstorm, every time I see it's a really cold night. I think there's going to be somebody else that happens to. The same exact thing. That they're getting high to numb their pain, and they're going to end up passing out. And if they're lucky enough to wake up, are they going to be in the same physical shape that they were when they passed out? Some will. Some definitely won't. It also reminds me to be extremely grateful. Always when it's raining or when it's snowing and it's cold and I got to warm my car up, or I got to run from the house to the car or the car to the house because it's raining and I hate being wet in the car and having a wet hoodie on or a wet shirt. That drives me nuts. And I find myself complaining at those times. And I always have to remember, what am I complaining about? I'm running from a warm house to a warm car. I'm running from a dry house to a dry car, right? And it reminds me of something that I always like to say. The stuff we complain about, somebody else is dying for, right? And I had to tell that to somebody a couple days ago. They found themselves complaining to me about a situation. And their situation is serious. It's a situation that I wouldn't like to be in. But there's still an upside to their situation. So just think about that. The situations that we find ourselves complaining about, somebody else is literally dying for. So this weekend when it snows and I have to get out there with Major and shovel my driveway and clean off my cars, it's going to be an inconvenience to me. But I have to remember I'm going to be warm. I'm going to have clothes on. I'm going to have a coat. I'm going to come into a nice hot cup of coffee and a nice hot shower where there's thousands of people that aren't that fortunate. That's my video, y'all. I missed yesterday. Me and Rachel had to run to New York to the airport to pick a family member up. I told myself I was going to upload one video every single day for the whole month of January. I missed yesterday. So this weekend I'm going to have to double up. So prepare to see my face and hear my voice. And those of y'all that are saying in the comments, Frank, you have a beautiful voice. You have a soothing voice. You could do audible books. Thank you. Y'all got my head blown up. I don't know if I'm going to fit through the doorway, but I'm going to make it. Thank you. It's the microphone. Remember to be kind, loving, and patient. I thank y'all. Be dropping an interview this weekend. And this weekend, I'll be doing a video about the changes that we're hoping to see in Kensington this weekend. New mayor took place. She declared it as a health crisis. And they're planning to clean Kensington up. Out of the two candidates, when I spoke to them, she definitely had me a little bit more optimistic. I thank y'all. Remember to be kind, loving, and patient. Have a great night.